Hello all, welcome, and yeah, hope you all had a nice long Memorial Day weekend. Hope you all got to relax, have fun, go to the beach, eat hamburgers, and do all that other fun stuff, while also keeping in mind the true meaning of the day and the real significance of it. But yeah, those long weekends are always so nice. They're always really, really nice. But I've got a couple videos to knock out. The next video I do after this one will be, as expected, my top 10 matches for the month of May of May 2016, that is, as if you didn't know it was 2016. And the video I'm doing right now is my classic match review, which I'd already promised you. Again, I'm going to do these monthly. I snuck it right in, last day of the month. So here we go. The match I will be reviewing this month is a WCW gem, one of my favorite matches from the Monday Night Wars period of WCW's history. It was a match that I always really liked. It was part of a feud and a series of matches that I really enjoyed. And that is Diamond Dallas Page versus Macho Man Randy Savage from Halloween Havoc 1997 in a Las Vegas... I've already forgotten what the name of the gimmick was. It was a Las Vegas, lights out or something like that. It was a Las Vegas sudden death match. That's what it was called. But really, if anybody wants to know what that is, it's basically a last man standing match. Although this was before last man standing was kind of a thing. Rock and Mankind was the first one that I remember. Rock and Mankind from St. Valentine's Day Massacre 99 was the first one I remember being called Last Man Standing. I could be wrong on that, but I had seen that type of match before, and this was one of the earlier examples of that type of match. You also had the Texas Death matches from Yonder that were kind of formatted like Last Man Standing matches. But yeah, DDP and Randy Savage had this knockdown, drag out, brawl all over the place type of match, and I thought it was very, very good, and it was, like I said, it was one of my favorite matches from WCW during this period, and one that I've always held up quite highly, and really highlighted a lot of the things that I liked about Diamond Dallas Page as a talent. I'm going to talk about DDP a little bit here, but talking about the gimmick of the match itself, my stance on Last Man Standing matches have always been, I don't hate the gimmick, but it's very easy to mess up and create a really monotonous match. Some of Cena's Last Man Standing matches were this way. The Triple H and Randy Orton Last Man Standing matches were this way, and there have been a few other ones. I remember Undertaker and Batista had one in '07 that was this way too, where the whole match is basically just do a spot, count to 10, do a spot, count to 10, do a spot, count to 10, and that's just the whole match. And it becomes very monotonous. So while I'm not opposed to the gimmick, it's one that is very easy to mess up and becomes just extremely monotonous. It's one of the reasons I actually kind of like the Texas Deathmatch format, where you have to get the pin first before you start counting to 10, because that allows the flow of the match to work a little bit better without having to rely on, the guy milking, getting back up to his feet. But there have also been some very good Last Man Standing matches. Obviously, this one, Triple H and Jericho from Fully Loaded 2000, John Cena and Umaga from Royal Rumble 2007 was a very good one. So there's been a fair share of good ones as well, and I want to highlight the good examples, and this is one of the good examples. The Diamond Dallas Page Randy Savage feud was actually one of my more favorite pairings during this time in WCW, because as we all know, the NWO was in full force. Hogan and Sting was clearly the destination point that everything was building to. Everything centered around Hogan and Sting, and everything else kind of splintered off from there, whether it be the NWO, Lex Luger and what he was doing and what DDP was doing, and Goldberg being established and being built up for, the streak and everything. And that would carry over into '98. But, and then you had the cruiserweights who were just off doing their own thing, and the U.S. title guys, off doing their own thing. And, Hogan Sting was definitely the main focus, but they didn't want to do that match right away. And very wisely, I thought, again, the only thing they screwed up about Hogan and Sting was the match itself. The build-up and everything was perfect. But in order to avoid doing that match right away, they had to, put certain roadblocks in Hogan's way, because Sting wasn't wrestling. So Hogan, worked with Luger for a while, and they had that match on Nitro, which was actually one of the better Nitro matches for the WCW title. Then, we also got the Hogan-Piper feud, which resulted in a very shitty cage match on this same pay-per-view, Halloween Havoc 97, which that's a funny thing about this show, because this happened the same month as Bad Blood 97. What is Bad Blood 97 known for? Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker in Hell in a Cell, one of the greatest matches of all time. Easily in my top. I would say if it's not my number one favorite of all time, it's in my top three. I honestly hold it up that high. Nobody else remembers anything else that happened on that show. I remember Bret Hart versus the Patriot for the WWF title, and how that was like one of the lamest title matches they've ever done. No knock on Bret, no knock on kind of a knock on the Patriot, but I like the Patriot, but it's like, where the fuck? Like, really? This is your title match? He's like a low card guy. What the hell? But the undercard for that show was very, very weak, but nobody cared because the main event was so amazing. It was one of the most amazing matches of all time. Halloween Havoc was kind of the opposite, where the undercard was actually pretty solid, because this was the same show where you got that classic Eddie and Ray match. You also had a few other things, like in the opening match was Ultimo Dragon versus Yuji Nagata, I believe. Jericho wrestled Gato, like an unadvertised special attraction match. And there were a few other things going on that were really nice. Flair and Perfect had a match that was really good. And you had this match as well. I also remember Luger and Scott Hall not being terrible, but yeah, it was like that. Halloween Havoc was actually a pretty solid show. The only major problem with it was the fucking main event, which was terrible. Like one of the worst cage matches ever. And it was one of those cases like, man, I really wish they just let Randy Savage and DDP close the show, because this match was amazing. And DDP and Randy Savage had actually been allowed to close at least one pay-per-view, maybe two. I'd have to go back and look. But they closed one pay-per-view with DDP getting the win over Randy Savage, which was a huge, like, star-making moment for DDP. And the matches they had were really, really good. They just had a natural chemistry with each other that just really worked well, and they had great matches together. And I've often said that the DDP Randy Savage series were the last great matches of Randy Savage's career. And you look at Randy Savage and the quality of work that he normally shelled out, especially in his prime. Savage is somebody I hold up in a very high esteem as far as his talent and his character and everything about him, his charisma, all of it. And he had a great series of matches with Diamond Dallas Page, and like I said, they were the last great matches of his career. And I'll even say that this match right here was probably the last great match of Randy Savage's career. A really great historic career. Unfortunately, Savage kind of, the wear and tear caught up to him a little bit. And he wasn't quite the Macho Man that we of old anymore. And fortunately, he didn't hang around too much longer. He was pretty much done by '99. But, it's not like some other guys that hung around way, way, way too long. But yeah, I look at this match and it's like, yeah, this was the last, like, truly great performance from Randy Savage. And it's a gem. It's definitely a gem. And for those people that kind of overlook WCW's history, and I know that history is written by the winners and all that stuff, but WCW did some really good things, and this match was one of them. So I highly recommend checking it out. And that brings me to Diamond Dallas Page. Speaking of overlooked talents, I've always felt, and I've always been a staunch supporter / defender of Diamond Dallas Page. I felt like he was one of the best stars from that era, WCW or WWF. He was one of my favorite guys. And a lot of the criticisms thrown towards him, to me, were completely groundless. He only got pushed because he's Eric Bischoff's friend. I'm like, okay, that might be true, but look at the quality of his work and tell me he doesn't deserve to get pushed. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, what's the example I'm thinking of? I had an example in my brain. I guess you could kind of say the same thing about Triple H, because he was kind of the Clique's buddy. And he got and you could say it's like, he only got opportunities because of who he got drunk with or who he drove with or whatever. And I'm like, well, yeah, but he was a talented guy with a lot of potential, so why not give him that opportunity? And we can quibble over what the reasons were why he got those opportunities, but he was a talented guy. He deserved a shot. A DDP, talented guy, over as fuck, charismatic as fuck. He deserved a shot. And you could say it was because he was Bischoff's friend or whatever, but I don't care. Fuck, a talented guy was on my TV. I don't give a fuck how it happened. As long as he didn't, fucking murder anybody, I can live with it. But, so I never liked that part of it, but, some people have also criticized him as like, oh, DDP only has 4 moves. And I'm like, which is never and I'm going to say it right here. That is never a valid criticism of anybody. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care how many moves you do or how many moves you can do. It makes no difference to me. And I've said that before, and I'll keep on saying it until the cows come home. To me, moves are a tool. It's like a paintbrush. It's a tool that you use to tell or to construct whatever art that you're trying to construct. You can tell an engaging wrestling story without doing that much. And that's one of the reasons, Roman Reigns caught a lot of shit. It's like, oh, he's only got 3 moves. I'm like, dude, I wish that was his only problem. Just, you can get around that. That you can work around if you've got a good character, if you have psychology and you know how to, play with the fan reactions, even if they're going against you, or if you know how to sell, or if you know how to do a bunch of other things. You can get around only having 3 moves. The problem is that Roman's got a shitty character and nobody gives a crap about him. That's the problem. And they insist on pushing him as a babyface, which is just totally just stubborn and ridiculous. But, I would argue he'd probably be great as a heel. I think his personality and his look and everything is just better suited for a heel. But, and if they pushed him heel, he'd probably gain acceptance as a face eventually. But they just don't want to do it. They don't want to do it. They don't fucking do it. But anyway, sidebar. Diamond Dallas Page, what he had that a lot of other guys don't, like the flip-floppy, high-flying guys, motherfucker could sell like nobody's business. And that was one of the best parts of this match, is that he went into the match injured, and throughout 97, DDP had like a series of rib injuries, kayfabe rib injuries, which he would use in his matches because that would be an attack point for his opponents. And the way he sold it and the way the announcers kept reminding people, it's like, look, he's injured. It added a lot to his matches, and motherfucker knew how to sell, and that's very key. And again, I put more stock in selling than I do the moves you can do, because anybody can. Well, I mean, not anybody, but tons of guys can do flip-floppy special moves, but not a whole lot of guys can sell really well. It's a very hard thing to do, and the selling is what makes the moves impactful. That's what makes them look like they hurt. Because if I'm like, I can make a shooting star press look like a piece of shit because all I have to do is not sell it. I can make it look like garbage. It can be the most amazing, like, top rope, spinny flipper move you could possibly imagine. I can make that move look like garbage by not selling it. And I see that happen a lot. John Cena. Motherfucker got slammed through a spotlight and came back the next night. Fuck that shit. But anyway, yeah, DDP could sell really, really well, and that added a lot to a lot of his matches, and it definitely added a lot to this one, because he went into a match with Randy Savage where there are no rules. It's a free-for-all, hardcore brawl, and he's going in there hurt, and that added a lot to the overall story, and it gave Savage a point of attack. It gave DDP something to try and overcome, and it added a lot more impact. When Savage hit the flying elbow drop, it felt like it hurt even more because you knew that he was attacking DDP's ribcage, and it hurt even more. And just things like that just make it mean more. Another great example of that working, watch Sasha and Bayley from last year's the Brooklyn match, where Sasha started stomping on Bayley's hand. Because Bayley's hand had been injured and was still injured going into that match as part of the story, it made that so much more impactful and just made Sasha look nastier, and it made Bayley all the more sympathetic. It's just little touches. I like little touches. The big moves are great, but I like the little nuances and the little touches, and I thought that this match did that very, very well. At this point in 97, you started seeing matches like the Bret Hart, Steve Austin submission match at WrestleMania 13. The year before, you had seen like the Buried Alive match between Undertaker and Mankind, and the Hollywood Backlot Brawl between Piper and Goldust. Actually, the Undertaker-Mankind matches in general tended to have that type of feel to them. The Boiler Room Brawl was another one. But you started to see like these wild, hardcore brawls where they'd brawl all over the place and there were no rules, and it was just a complete free-for-all. And this match was cut from that cloth, and really kind of the continuation of that becoming more of a standard, because that really did become a standard in the in the Attitude Era and in the Monday Night Wars period. And you definitely argue that ECW started it. I don't think there is much of an argument there. I think it's pretty damn true. It's like, yeah, they pretty much started that kind of wild free-for-all style of wrestling. And some people look down on that because they're like, oh, I want pure wrestling. And again, I'm kind of that guy that's like, I don't necessarily have a preference as long as you do what you do really well and you're able to tell that story. And I want to see these two fight. Then it doesn't really matter. It's just kind of like, just tell your story and I'm fine. And this was one of those cases. I believe that both guys wanted to beat the shit out of each other. I believe that DDP was like the hero was one of the heroes for WCW, and Randy Savage was one of the top ranking guys in the NWO. He had Miss Elizabeth in his corner. And actually, this might be, and they mentioned it on commentary, this might be the most active I ever saw Elizabeth get in a match, where she knocked out a referee by hitting him over the head with a plate or something. I forget what it was. She also strangled DDP with an extension cord at one point. It's like, wow, this is the most active I've seen Miss Elizabeth ever get. And of course, that led to Kimberly Page coming out and dragging her backstage and stuff and evening the odds, which was a great little moment. And it was also funny because Miss Elizabeth was like a crush of mine when I was 5 years old, probably my first crush. It was either her or Jennifer Connelly from Labyrinth. It's dark hair, man. It's all about dark hair. And Kimberly Page came out. Okay, when I was 11, 12, and 13, Kimberly Page, oh, she was my jam. I was like, oh man, Kimmy. Yeah, everybody talks about Sunny being like the big sex kitten wrestling diva, and it's eventually Sable. I'm like, Kimberly Page. She was my girl. I was like, oh god, it was just, beautiful. That woman helped get me through puberty, and it's like, Kimberly Page, if you're watching this, I apologize for being filthy, and also thank you very much. But yeah, no, I thought that was a great little thing where DDP was able to even the odds with Elizabeth out there and cancel her out basically by having Kimberly come out and drag her back. So I was like, that was a neat little thing. They did a ref bump at one point. And they did something that I never see before or after this, where they actually sent out a trainer to check on the referee. I'm like, oh my god, how often do you see that? I'm like, normally they just like, oh, referee's unconscious, oh well, and they just leave him out there. And it's like, oh yeah, sure, nobody cares about the zebra. But I kind of like that as a nice. It's like, yeah, why don't the trainers always go out there to help the referee when they get knocked down? It's like you would think that they'd be standing right there, waiting for something bad to happen to the ref, because they're the ones most in danger. But it's just one of those funny little things. It's actually one of those little things that makes this match stand out to me even more. It really kind of added to the whole chaotic nature of the whole thing. But yeah, they had this great little brawl through the crowd where actually the Ravens flock was sitting there in the front row watching the show, which was one of those nice little touches that the flock had in its early days. And brawled through the crowd, and they went under that cheesy graveyard set that Halloween Havoc always had, and they started breaking the caskets and the tombstones and all that other shit over everybody's head. And it was, again, just a really nice, very cool little brawl that took advantage of, and that's another thing, I miss, like, specialty pay-per-view sets. Like, even if they were cheesy, it was like this nice little, like, aesthetic that made him stand out over the rest. Like, Bash at the Beach always had, like, a great set, I thought, and I always liked the way Bash at the Beach looked. I always liked, like Nitro, WCW was really good at that, actually, having like really great looking specialty sets. And I remember WWF having a few that were really good. I remember Armageddon 99 had like the military get up and everything, and that looked really cool. And everything just kind of looks the same now, and it's kind of boring. I wish they'd, except for WrestleMania, which looks fantastic typically, but, yeah, I wish they'd put a little bit more creativity into the sets, because everything kind of looks very sterile and homogenized now. But in any case, so the brawl's going on, the girls fight to the back, and you get to that closing sequence towards the end where, and one of the things I always loved about DDP, and I know I've talked about this before, the Diamond Cutter is probably my favorite finishing move of all time, because I love moves like Jake Roberts' DDT, the Stone Cold Stunner, and the Diamond Cutter, which was the best. And I'll throw the RKO is the same move. So, I'll throw that up there as well. Because it has that, it can come out of nowhere and your lights are out just like that. And sorry, I snapped my fingers poorly there. But I just love that whole idea that it's like a Cobra Strike, where if that move gets hit, you're down. And the match is over. And DDP, I don't know, the Diamond Cutter was just kind of my favorite version of that type of finisher, where you just snap, boom, you hit it and it's over. And it always felt like he had these awesome counters for it. Like my favorite one was it was actually Halloween Havoc the next year. Actually, it was him versus Goldberg, and he countered the jackhammer into the diamond cutter, and it looked amazing. And DDP was always coming up with these really great counters for the diamond cutter, and Randy Orton followed suit with some of his amazing counters into the RKO, like the curb stomp one from WrestleMania a couple years, or WrestleMania 31 last year. The one where he countered the Evan Bourne's shooting star press into the RKO looked amazing. And I just love stuff like that. It really makes the move come to life when you feel like you can hit it from anywhere. And DDP was a master of it. Did all sorts of cool things with the diamond cutter. And he had another really cool counter here where he kept going for it, but he couldn't quite hit it. And then out of nowhere, he kind of Randy Savage picks him up for a scoop slam, and he's able to kind of like finagle his way around, spin him around, hit the diamond cutter. And it's like, yes! Fucking yeah! And, it's like, Savage hit 2 elbow drops on him. They brawled all over the place. He used all sorts of weapons. There was a ref bump. You had the 2 girls fighting. You had the brawl up the stage and all this other crazy shit going on. It was just a really fun, chaotic, wild match that really captured the type of energy that DDP and Randy Savage could have whenever they worked with each other. And again, it's one of the reasons I kind of wish this had been the main event. We didn't have to suffer through that goddamn Hogan-Piper cage match. But yeah, I mean, they had been allowed to main event pay-per-views in the past, and it was actually beneficial to have feuds and pairings like this. You could sell that as a main event without giving away the big world title match right away. So the world title matches are even bigger because they don't happen all the time and they're special. And then you get these big grudge matches that feel like main events all their own. So it's one of the reasons I kind of use DDP and Randy Savage as kind of my reasoning behind, yes, an intercontinental title match can main event a pay-per-view. Yes, a tag title match or a tag title grudge match or a tag team grudge match or a women's match or a major grudge match or something can main event a pay-per-view. You just got to sell it. You got to have the right talents in place to make it work. And you got to have the right story. You got to have the right everything. But you can have something besides a world title match or a match between 2 part-timers main event a pay-per-view, and it'll work fine. What was the finish to this match? A Sting imposter, which was a popular tool of the NWO for some reason. At this point, it felt pointless to have a Sting imposter because we all knew that it wasn't the real Sting. Even the announcers weren't like trying to sell it like, oh my God, what did Sting just do? But anyways, fake Sting came down, hit DDP in the ribcage with the ball bat, and DDP was down for the 10 count and wasn't able to get back up, which again, I like. The injury played a factor in the finish, which again, I don't see enough of that nowadays because I see so many matches now where guys will sell a leg injury and they'll end up winning the match using a move where they have to use their leg. Finn Balor, I saw you do that in the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Tournament, and it's like, what's the point of having the injury if it's not going to impact the finish at all? Like, there's no point. It's just, you just sold a leg injury and it meant nothing. And I see that all the time, and I don't mean to single out Finn Balor because, like I said, I see it a lot. And it's like, look, if I'm going to work a match around selling an arm injury or selling a neck injury or a leg injury or something like that, I want it to have some kind of an impact in the finish. Whether it be, I have to use some kind of different move because my normal move is taken out of the equation because of the injury, or my injury cost me the match. It should be one of those. Again, that level of psychology just isn't always there. But yeah, no, the injury played a factor in the finish. I like that. Savage went over, which I guess the NWO needed to keep their heat rolling going into Starrcade 97, where they eventually fucked everything up with the Sting Hogan match, but whatever. Overall, I thought this match was very, very fun, very good. It held up very well, I thought, when I watched it again this weekend. And, it's one of the highlights from WCW for me. Again, the whole Savage DDP series of matches is one of my favorite, WCW things ever. And I often use it as one of the reasons is like, look, people can shit on WCW all they want, but they did some good stuff. Savage and DDP, that was some good stuff, and I loved it. And it was one of the main reasons that DDP became one of my favorite guys. I was like, nope, this guy's good. I don't care what you all say. I like this guy. He's a great storyteller. He's very, very good at his craft. I love his finisher. His charisma is off the charts. He's a very likable guy. It has a nice story getting into wrestling where he got in very, very late. And for him to be as good as he was at like starting at like 35 is amazing. And one of the great stories is like, hey, I guess you can teach an old dog some new tricks. For him to get in as late as he did and be as good as he was for the length of time that he was good. And I look back on him and it's like, WWE, you totally dropped the ball with him. I mean, I don't care. 2001, he was the only guy you got from WCW that was like a big star. And some people will say Booker T, and I'm like, Booker, and I'm not shitting on Booker, but Booker was the guy that was on top of the ship after it already sunk. Like, he was the world champion after the war was pretty much over. So, again, I'm not shitting on Booker. I'm just saying it's like DDP was like the one guy you got from that, like, height of the Monday Night War period, and they felt the need to make an example out of him by feeding him to Undertaker and, having Undertaker's wife go over him, and which they did do that on an episode of Raw. I distinctly remember watching it and getting disgusted. They had that stupid fucking cage match at SummerSlam with him and Kanyon, another misused talent. Kanyon is one of the most talented guys in the history of wrestling that gets no credit. Like, he gets absolutely no fucking credit. I'm not saying he was like a world title level guy, but God, you want to talk about a good hand. That motherfucker should still be in the company right now. And, it's sad that his life turned out the way it did and he's no longer with us, but it's like he should have had a great career and he should still be there now. He should, just one of the WCW stigma, I guess. It's a tough thing to overcome, but DDP was a great talent. Randy Savage is one of the greatest talents in the history of the business. That goes without saying. And you put the two together, and it just made magic. There's nothing else I can really say about it. One of my favorite WCW matches, and it's my favorite match of one of my favorite WCW series. It was just great, involving two of my favorite wrestlers. I mean, there's nothing more to really put over here. It's just I just love it. It's a great match. Two great talents just doing great work. So if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend going and checking it out. It's on the WWE Network, $9.99. So go check it out. And I guess you could watch the Hogan Piper cage match if you want, or just turn the show off after the Las Vegas sudden death match. Also check out Eddie and Ray from that same show. That might be the best match that Eddie and Ray had with each other. So, that was one of the better cruiserweight matches in WCW history, which says a lot because there were a lot of really good cruiserweight matches. But with all of that said, that was my classic match review for the month of May, so stay tuned next month where I will have another one. I'm not sure what the match will be, but I'm sure I can think of something, right? I've got plenty to work with. So, and I have the entire network pay-per-view library at my disposal, so I've got plenty of stuff to go with. But until then, I will see you all later.